So this next thing is the closeout debate, and this has been a huge topic. If you've been following the lockdown blog or the podcast or anything lockdown related, closeout footwork has been a huge debate, and I think it's even picked up a little steam as now coaches are converting more to this 1-2 stop, the stride stop. And I just wanted to figure out what was ideal, because I've been kind of leaning to that stride stop, just sprint to stop. You see it a lot in the NBA. You see studies in the NBA that back it up as being more efficient and also being more efficient at containing drivers. But let's dive into the film and see what we find, right? I've always been a big believer, and the film doesn't lie. And so chopping your feet, the age-old, teaching point, it controls momentum. It can make it easier for guys who are slow-footed, to stop their momentum. And you can see some good examples here. But the downside is, as we've seen in those examples, is that it slows you down. You're chopping, especially if you're sprinting, and then you're teaching your players to chop their feet sometimes 10 times. If we go back to that practice drill, it looks great, it sounds great, right? But the truth of the matter is, we're really slowing down our momentum, and if the player just wants to elevate and shoot, there's going to be space to do so, right? So you have a slow recovery into that impact zone. And if you don't have an early hand, if you don't, early hand is a must in your closeout. If you don't have an early hand and you're not getting to that distance of impact, the shooters are just going to shoot over you. Now, the positive about chopping your feet, which I agree with, is because of that slow momentum, you do have a slight cushion if they decide to put it on the floor. And so that slight cushion should give you an advantage in cutting off a player. The flip side of that is the sprint to stop footwork, right? That is just to go from a sprint to a stride stop. And some coaches will be like, my players can't do that. You ask them to do that when they're going for a layup. You ask them to go full speed and land on 2. You ask them to come off a ball screen at full speed and then elevate for their jump shot on 2 feet. Same thing defensively, right? So it's not out of the norm. You can see some NBA examples here. Sprinting, 1-2, boom, right into the shooter's airspace. The good thing about that is, just like if you're doing a vertical jump, if you want your players to leave, be second jumper, contest at the point of release type of stuff, it's going to add to their spring, right? A 1-2 into a jump is going to be more effective than a chopping your feet into a jump in terms of getting vertical. It's a lot more difficult, though, to contain a driver, right? Because you are getting really tight to that airspace, as we can see in this clip. And you're usually at an angle, right? Because that 1-2 stop, like you're touching a baseline, right? You're angling your stance to push off. You're usually going to have a pretty steep angle for a guy to attack you. And it's going to be tough to cut off. Every time you're angled as a defender, it's going to be tough to cut off that angle. The second thing it does is, if you're not getting close to the hip, it can expose your top foot, which is probably the worst thing that can happen to you defensively, because now you got to swing your whole body open. And so it has its weaknesses and it has its strengths. You're exposing your top foot. You're getting closer to disrupt shots, but you're also more susceptible to drives. And so we have this yin and yang, right? You have the chopping your feet, which is more likely to give up shots, but more likely to contain. And you have the stride stop, which is more likely to, disrupt shooters, but more likely to give up drives. And so you have coaches who swear by different techniques. And listen, I understand why the NBA has embraced the 1-2 stop, because it is a game so predicated on 3-point shots. The efficiency of 3-point shooters is better and better the levels you go up, right? You leaving an NBA player open like Klay Thompson is a lot more deadly than leaving a high school player, even if he is a great shooter, just because of the frequency of them making that shot and the consistency of them doing so. Whereas in the high school world, paint touches, getting to the foul shot layups are a lot more consistent in terms of giving you points than 3-point shots. So that variance can lead you to decide one or the other, right? Or you can go to the middle ground, which is, I think, whenever there's a debate, if you just look at what's the middle ground, you probably find a good solution, right? The solution's usually not one of the extremes. And so a 4-step stop It's something I really believe in. You can see Paul from PGF Performance. He's talked about this as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful, right? You get the best kind of both worlds. You get that chop to control the momentum, but then you get the 1, 2 to get into the space. And again, this is hopefully you're getting the best of both worlds, but it's also something the players know, right? If you watch any player sprint their hardest, you tell them to go touch the baseline and come back. There are players that run and just stop on a dime and push off. There are players who need a lot more breakdown, but most players are going to take a 1, 2, 3, 4 push off. So it is common for most players, right? It is a footwork technique that most players have some prior use of. So that's kind of where I've landed after studying it for, I don't even know now, 2 years, going back and forth about it. Whereas, 4-step breakdown, trying to get the best of both worlds.